A leading Catholic author recently learned one of his books is available again on Amazon. Ryan Anderson's When Harry Became Sally examined the scientific, medical, philosophical, and legal debates surrounding the transgender movement. It had been banned for 4 years. The online retail giant made the book unavailable soon after Joe Biden took office. Amazon initially said the book presented same-sex identity as a mental illness, claims Anderson and the publisher strongly deny. The Washington Post made a similar claim, which it later retracted. Republican Tom Cotton says he reached out to Amazon and asked to see the exact passages that were deemed hateful. Amazon never responded. Anderson weighed in on social media, saying in part, quote, "Jeff Bezos and Amazon have done the right thing. I'm also grateful to my friends and allies who pushed for this to happen." And Ryan Anderson, president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center, joins us now. Ryan, we have a lot to discuss, including the return of your book to Amazon, buyers after 4 years. But first, we mentioned President Trump's executive order removing biological men from women's sports on social media. You have called this measure, quote, excellent. Why are you so pleased?
Sure. So, now it's been almost a decade that we've seen the federal government try to rewrite Title IX, try to force boys who identify into the girls' locker room and onto the girls' sports teams, despite the fact that the grassroots don't like this. Soccer moms don't like this. Joe the plumber doesn't like this. It's incredibly unpopular. It's like a 70-30, 80-20 issue. And yet the left was insistent on imposing gender ideology on the nation. Thankfully, President Trump has called their bluff. And it's popular with the American people to say girls' sports are for girls. That photo that was going just viral on social media last week of President Trump surrounded by all these female athletes, that's where the American people are. They think girls' sports should be for girls. And it took someone like President Trump to finally say the emperor has no clothes when it comes to gender ideology in women's sports.
Indeed. And President Trump also issued an executive order on gender ideology. Since then, many federal government agencies have changed or removed transgender wording from their websites. What is the impact of this executive order? And can you share some examples of the changes in wording?
Sure. I mean, so what's interesting here is that, in addition to the women's sports, President Trump issued an executive order titled Protecting Children from Chemical and Surgical Mutilation. And he issued a day one executive order defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. And he issued an executive order ending radical indoctrination in K through 12 schooling. And all three of those additional executive orders touch on gender ideology. So one is whether or not the federal government, insofar as it funds local school systems, whether it will be funding gender ideology in K through 12 schooling. That executive order says no. One is, any institution that receives federal health care funding, you can no longer engage in either chemical or surgical mutilation of children, right? And Trump is very blunt in his language. The euphemism that the left uses is, quote, gender-affirming care. I think all three of those words are inaccurate. It's not care, it's not affirming, and it's not gender, right? It's a gender identity. It's not biological sex. So what Trump has said there is that he's instructed HHS and other agencies to more or less defund pediatric child mutilation. And already we've seen various hospitals that were the pioneers of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgery for minors have announced that they're no longer doing this. And I think that's a huge win for sanity and for children's well-being. And there's more to come. I think we're going to see more hospitals and schools realize that they're going to be on the wrong side of the federal government for the next 4 years if they try to defy these things.
Great. And now your book, When Harry Became Sally, written in 2018 and pointing to the dangers of the transgender movement. How did you find out it would be available on Amazon again, and what was your reaction?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. I started writing this book back in 2016, shortly after the Obergefell decision, because I could tell that the left was not going to declare victory and shut down the LGBT activist groups, send the donors back their money. They were going to pivot to the T part of the acronym, which no one knew what it meant. We had spent 2 decades debating marriage. Now they were going to the T. So the book comes out February of 2018, and Amazon sold it for 3 years, from 2018 until 2021, because President Trump was in office and the Republicans had the majority in the Senate. And then February of 21, Biden's now in office. The book has disappeared. And then February of 2025, the book comes back. And I found out, to answer your question, I got a text message from a friend of mine who used to be a Senate staffer. And he said, the lobbyist that would always visit my office just sent me the link to your book. The book is back. And so it was just very interesting to me that this is transparently political. When Trump was in office, the first time they sold the book. When Biden was in office, they got rid of the book. Now that Trump is back, they don't want the FTC or the Senate Republicans opening an investigation of their business practices. So the book is back.
That's quite troubling to hear, but I'm glad at least that your book is available again. Now that it is available on Amazon, what's your hope for buyers?
Yeah, I mean, so what's interesting here is that there's a certain type of conservative author or speaker who writes intentionally or speaks intentionally in an inflammatory manner, hoping to be canceled, right? And then they can go on Fox News or something and talk about how they've been canceled and sell more books or get more speaking invitations. My approach is probably the exact opposite. This book on transgender ideology, the books that I've done on abortion, on religious liberty, on marriage, they've all been meant to be accessible to people who don't already agree with me, right? I'm in the persuasion business. I'm in the convert making business. I want to take people who don't yet agree, help them agree. I want to take people who do agree already and help them better understand the issue so they can then speak to their neighbors, speak to their classmates, speak to their colleagues, and persuade them about what the truth of the matter is. So the hope now is that more people, for 4 years, you couldn't find the book if you did a search for it on Amazon. For 4 years, the algorithms that Amazon uses to, promote books, if you bought this book, you might like this book. None of that was happening for my book. So my hope is that now, many more people hear about the book, they buy the book, they read the book, and then it starts changing people's minds. Because the subtitle of the book was about a transgender moment. This is not the truth. This isn't the right side of history. We will look back on this as a moment in time when we got human nature wrong, and there are human costs of getting human nature wrong.
Quite a prophetic voice. Thank you so much, Ryan Anderson.
No, happy to be with you.